Hi, everybody. It's another installment of Tales from the Cabin. And it's about midnight out here in the desert, nice and quiet. I just walked over from the house and decided it was time for another installment. So, the music business takes you a lot of different places. And family ties and knowing people and et cetera, et cetera. So, I had a cousin of mine, my cousin Butchie, who went by the professional name of Lou Perry, was a film producer. And he produced some of the most famous movies in the 70s, one of the most controversial movies in the 70s. It was called Deep Throat. And it was a cultural phenomenon. And my cousin was the one that put the money up. There was a guy who was a sleazy film guy named Gerard Damiano. He was the guy that had the idea for Deep Throat. And he came to my cousin for the money. And my cousin gave him the money. I think it might have been $60,000. And so the movie was unbelievably successful. And my cousin became a multi-millionaire because of it. But of course, being scrutinized by the federal government and other law enforcement because of his family affiliations, it was a very tenuous time for him and his family. And but Butchie always liked me. I was the little cousin, played in a band. He actually even put up money one time for me to go in the studio. And he was serving federal prison time. And I actually went with my dad to go visit him to thank him for putting the money up for me to make this recording for my band. And he was in a penitentiary in Pennsylvania, federal pen. And I brought in a cassette player, a little cassette machine so he could hear the music. And the guard was like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, it's a recording going to play for my cousin." And the guy looks at me and goes, "You're trying to bring a cassette recorder into a federal prison?" Needless to say, I waited out in the waiting room. But Butchie was really nice to me. He always was really cool. And he was producing movies and, they produced a lot of other adult movies. And he had this guy, this really seedy character, working for him, doing the music for the movies. And his name was Tony. And he was an old record guy. He had a record deal back in the day with Capitol Records, and he was a pretty interesting character. Anyway, he had a falling out with Butchie, and I happened to be around at the time, and Butchie said, "Yeah, I fired that idiot." That he didn't use the word idiot, but he said, "I fired that guy that did the movie music." He says, "Anybody know how to do any music?" I raised my hand. And I said, question you always ask in the music business. I said, "How much does it pay?" And he said, "I'm giving this punk $3,500. I said, "Oh, I can produce." So, before you know it, I am the producer of adult movie music. And the first movie that I did was called Candy Stripers Part 2. Tony had produced Candy Stripers Part 1. And then once he was moved out of position, I assumed the position of producer. So, of course, I rounded up all my musician friends and guys in my band. And we went in the studio, a 24-track studio, because I had this budget. And, of course, what musician wouldn't want to play on an adult movie soundtrack? So we go in and we record the soundtrack to Candy Stripers Part 2, which actually won Best Soundtrack for adult movie. And when they presented the awards, a lot of people in the business knew who I was because I was Butchie's cousin. I was the guy that made the music because I was already working on a couple of movies, other movies by then. By the time the movie was nominated and the soundtrack was nominated. And you can look at it. I'll send a link in the description of the opening credits, and you'll hear me singing with my band Joe Skippy and the Lions. And there's a lot of secret meaning about the whole Skippy thing, which maybe I'll do in another podcast. But so anyway, so I do the music, and it gets nominated for an award. And my father, of course, says, well, you can't go accept the award because someday you're going to be a big rock star. You don't want this coming back to bite you on the ass. And I said, oh, but Dad, I want to do it. Anyway, so when it was announced that Joe Skippy and the Lions from Leone Productions won the award for the best soundtrack, one of the other guys from Arrow Film and Video, which was the company that my cousin owned, one of the ones he owned, went up to accept the award. Everybody was going, that's not Joey. Always don't give him the award. That's not Joey. And, of course, that was the only award I ever won in my entire career. So, anyway, I'm getting to the really funny part of it. Anyway, so Butchie had a bodyguard. And Butchie's bodyguard happened to be a guy named Lenny Montana, who was, of course, Luca Brasi in The Godfather. Now, Lenny had been a wrestler, but he was a knockaround guy. As we said in the neighborhood, he was a knockaround guy. And so Lenny, he was my cousin's bodyguard, hung around with him and stuff. So my cousin owned an electronics store out in Long Island, one of his legitimate businesses. And I went there one day because I used to go there once in a while and pilfer electronic equipment like cassette decks. And this particular day, I got this JVC, boom box. This thing was like amazing. I made so many I still have the recordings on cassette of my bands from that era, from the 70s and early 80s, jam sessions and studios and stuff, with this amazing cassette recorder that had like stereo microphones on it and like adjustable inputs, which was a big deal because the bands would always play loud, and when you played back the cassettes, it was always like anyway. So I'm at Butchie's electronics store, and Lenny Montana's there, and he's got an amazing pair of Porsche sunglasses. And I'm looking at the sunglasses. I was like, man, those are really cool. Like, those were like a big deal back in those days, the Porsche sunglasses, in the 80s. So I decided I'm going to steal Lenny's Porsche sunglasses. So while he's not looking, I take the sunglasses and put them in my little bag that I had, some electronic wires and stuff that I had pilfered from Butchie's store. But, Butchie would let me take anything I wanted. He was cool with me. For some reason, he liked me. I don't know why. I must have been somewhat likable at the time. Anyway, so I steal Lenny Montana's sunglasses. So that's the story of how I stole Luca Brasi's sunglasses. And the next time I was at Butchie's, it was a couple of months later, Lenny was there, and he's like, I know you stole my sunglasses. And plus, I was a little bit of a ball breaker in those days. I'd be like, Lenny, what was it like working with Marlon Brando and being in The Godfather? And he was like, it was a great honor to work. He did the whole Don Corleone thing. He was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I did. He knew I stole the glasses, too, because he used to say to me, I know you stole those glasses from me. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I had those Porsche sunglasses for years. I never even wore them. They looked kind of silly on me. I looked like looked like the Fly when I had them on. They were so big. But so that's the story of how I stole Luca Brasi's sunglasses. And only in America. Okay, see you on the next one.